All right, Nurses on Fire, we are back with Lisa Peterson, our lovely Lisa Peterson, our certified financial planner. And today we are going to talk about, again, things that you would ask a financial planner or financial planner that you are interested in working with. And this question came up in the community, and it said that I would ask their credit score to ensure that they are knowledgeable because the credit score is the report card in the adult world. Okay, so Lisa, what would you do if somebody asked you what your credit score was?
I love this question. First of all, I was shocked when I got what was being said, just to say that, okay? Because I'm like, ooh, I can imagine some people wouldn't answer that question, or they'd be really uncomfortable as an advisor. However, the second part was I would totally share it because I'm super proud of my credit score, and people, my sense is only the people who have something to hide would be afraid of sharing it. Like there's nothing you can't use it against somebody, right? I mean, it's not a big deal, but it is a very personal thing. Would you agree with that?
It is very personal. I think a lot of people, I don't know, I might have been reluctant to share my credit before because to me it was a place of shame. Even when I did reach the paying off all this debt, credit to me was a big struggle because within my story, I've had bankruptcies. And in that bankruptcy, my credit cards got wiped out. And so I didn't even qualify for credit cards for a long time. So when I was paying off all my debt, credit even never even came into play because I didn't have credit cards. I've been denied for so many credit cards for whatever reason. Like credit cards to me are credit scores always represented kind of like a badge of shame. And it always held and it still holds. Like my bankruptcy isn't going to fall off my report until a couple of months. So for 10 years, I've had this thing on my credit that people continuously ask me about, that even though it doesn't affect my credit, it still affects my credit. Like my credit score will not go as high as most people's as fast just because that I have that factor on there. And so but and also for me, I'm at the point where it could represent shame, but it doesn't represent shame because it aids in a story. It aids in my story and it tells you about how what I went through, but how I'm overcoming that and that there is hope. There is some light at the end of the tunnel. And I'm kissing that 800 range, but I'm not there yet. But it's because I have that testimony to go along with it.
Yeah. So what I'm getting from what you just shared is that, if you ask the question and you let them know that it's not about judging them, but it is about understanding where they've been. Maybe they've got great credit, but if they don't, you want to hear the story behind it because it will help the way that they're approaching their own finances. And we don't want platitudes. Platitudes are just like saying things because they sound good. And I think this is the problem in the financial services business in general, is they'll just say all these fancy things. And sometimes they'll just amaze you with their like things they can tell you about. But in reality, they don't really factor into your relationship. Whereas if somebody were to say, hey, I'm going to be honest with you. And first of all, the minute they say that, and then they start to tell you a story, like maybe their credit score isn't great, but they do have a story of compelling, like, this is how I got myself, into a problem, or this is what happened. And then this is what I've been doing ever since. Like, gosh, I just think that is a really fascinating question because you would learn. And if somebody says, I'm sorry, that's none of your business, like, it's like, well, you're going to know my whole life by the time we move forward. So for me to ask that simple question, like, where's the defensiveness coming from? Like, why wouldn't you want me to know? So you can turn it around and use it as a way to see if this person is like seriously interested in you and you as a person, or are they just interested in like checking the notch? I got another client.
Exactly, exactly. And I think that's smart. And I also think that when these questions come up, it can also serve as a teachable moment, because I don't necessarily think that having a great credit score is associated with being super good with money or being wealthy. Having a great credit score to me signifies that you may know how to manage debt. But what if you don't believe in debt? What if you just believe in paying everything cash? Does that make you less responsible than somebody that has a really stellar credit score?
Well, yeah, because what you're implying is that the score might be lower because they're not using credit that much, right? Yeah, and extenuating circumstances. I mean, they may, you have to be prepared for whatever they say, because it may be like, hey, there was a really tough family emergency, and there's going to be things that are way too personal for them to share, and I think you really have to be compassionate, but it's in the response. It's in the, hey, I get why you're asking that, or how dare you ask that. It's like, well, that's kind of important. I mean, and I think you're right. It's not that you are necessarily bad, that the advisor is bad with money. But the problem is that the system has not been created with very many benchmarks or tools to actually get to the bottom of whether or not somebody is really there just to make money, or if it's like a lifelong passion of being in service of people and their money.
Yes, yes,
Because don't
yes.
we want to work with advisors who it's a lifelong passion to like be in service of people and their money?
But people don't know how to ask those questions to get to those people. I know that when people reach out to me in search of financial advisors, they're just looking for somebody who, like we talked about before, is kind of just gonna take over everything and fix all their money problems. And they think that's what it is, that's what it's gonna be. But they're not understanding that it's a relationship, it's a balance, because ultimately you're the only person who can fix your money problems, but these are people who can give you the tools and hold your hands along the way. Um, but it has to be somebody that you really want to work with. And so I think, going back to the episode where we talked about what questions to ask, for certified, when you're looking for a certified financial planner, or looking for someone to help you with your money, I think that's a good question to, I mean, a good episode to revisit. Um, because you really want somebody that has your best interest in heart, someone that understands what you're going through, like we talked about in the last episode, and someone, because you are going to be revealing your all your personal information to somebody that you feel like you can trust with that information.
Yeah, I think it was a great conversation last time, and I think that um, knowing that people are asking you insightful questions, it's so funny because yesterday I met with an advisor that I'm actually thinking, even though I am talented and could do this myself, and I have been for the past 10 years, I'm looking to move all of my money to an advisor who specializes in more alternative investing, so socially responsible investing. And I've been following him for years. He's been on my podcast. He's written books about the process that they take people through, and it's a very high consciousness decision that
Mm,
I may pay him. I didn't even care about his fees, quite frankly, because I know we're so aligned in the core values that he'll take care of that. Like, he will pay for himself, but it's about aligning our values together. And even when he went into the conversation, what I'm excited about is the questions that he's inviting me to dive into. Like, he gave a full spectrum of all the different things, like investing in, folks that would not be able to get financing for their business, for example, that they have funds that are specifically set up for, like, I mean, just so many creative things. And I was like, I'm sold, because this isn't about the money for me. Like, I feel like I'm going to be okay. This is about making sure that that money is, being used in a way to make the world a better place. And so, again, you can ask these questions of your advisor too, because they do have access to socially responsible investments. And by the way, those products will get just as good of returns as the other ones, but people don't ask. And so then they don't recommend them because they don't understand them. But if you want to find someone who is more interested in socially responsible, then go out there and look for them. There are directories. Both of us could have people in FinCon probably from that community that I've met who are specialists as well. But that would be another thing. Like, ask them questions about things that are important to you, or that you might not want money going into certain companies, guns or tobacco or certain things. Like, you can't screen for those with most advisors nowadays.
And I think like a lot of things that have been coming up lately is people that have supported a whole lot of racist organizations, and people are trying to defund those because honestly, the only way to create change is to hit people in their pockets. And if that's something that's super important to you, then it's important that you work with a financial advisor that understands that, or else they'll pigeonhole you into whatever kind of investment makes the return that they think that you should be getting. And so these are all good questions. I'm so proud of my community for asking these questions. Make sure to drop your question in the community or on nursesonfirepodcast.com/ask if you have any more questions. Again, Lisa, it has been my honor to have you here on the podcast because you always bring so much knowledge, but always from uh, just such a compassionate heart and just a good place. And I always learn something new. So I appreciate you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.